Ambassador John Bolton is here to take your calls on LBC until 5 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme, Ambassador. It's very good to see you.
Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Let's start where we've been starting this hour, which is the situation in Ukraine. The comments of Steve Witkoff, the Trump chief negotiator, who suggests that Starmer's idea of putting UK-EU coalition of the willing on the ground is too simplistic. Charlie's in Goole on that to kick us off. Charlie, you're through to Ambassador Bolton.
Hi there, matey. Will Trump and the cabinet do everything that is necessary to ensure a lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine? And what can Keir Starmer and Europe do to help?
Good question. Ambassador, first of all, when was the last time you were called matey?
It's not too long ago. I know a lot of Australians.
Great. Okay, great. Right, let's get on to the serious matter then of how a lasting peace can be brought to Ukraine and the role that EU and UK can play in this.
Well, I don't think there's any prospect of a truly lasting peace as long as Putin and people who think like him are in control of the Russian government. This is not simply a one-off attack on Ukraine. We know the Russians invaded first, obviously, in 2014, reflecting what Putin had said going back as far as 2005. In effect, he wants to recreate the Russian Empire. And until we realize that, finding a way to have stability between Ukraine and Russia really is a fool's errand. I think it's a mistake for Ukraine to agree to a ceasefire. I think it's going to get nibbled to death. They lost 7, 8, 9% of their country in 2014. They've lost up to 20% in this war, admittedly at an extraordinary human cost to Russia. But I don't think the Kremlin's going to stop, at least under this regime, until that percentage comes close to 100.
That's a stark contrast with what Steve Witkoff was telling Tucker Carlson the other day, which is Putin doesn't want to take Ukraine, they can't hold on to it, and certainly they don't want to threaten Europe at all. NATO's there to protect them. What does he not see that you do, apparently, John?
Well, I think Witkoff may be an outstanding real estate developer in Manhattan, but that doesn't qualify him to do what he's doing now. I think the idea that he can go and talk to Putin in the Kremlin and see what's really going on is a delusion. I think he's being used as an instrument of Russian propaganda, as is Tucker Carlson. I think the two of them probably had a great time. And I think if people really want to see what is on Trump's mind, listen to that whole interview, because that is what is being fed directly into Trump's brain and explains a lot of what he's doing.
But did you see any of that? I don't know, not pro-Russian, but any of that kind of that Trump's mind, Trump's thinking towards Russia when you were dealing with this issue of US-Russia relations when you were in the White House? Because you were pretty cautious towards President Putin. Did you, when that message tried to get home with President Trump, did it land at all?
No, it didn't. Look, he thinks he and Putin are friends. He thinks he and Xi Jinping are friends. He said of Kim Jong-un of North Korea in his first term, he said, "We fell in love." That's how he thinks of international relations. If he has good relations with Vladimir Putin and the U.S. has good relations with Russia, that's simply not true. These hard men know what they want for their country. We don't agree with it, but they know what they want. And Trump doesn't understand what's at stake, and certainly Witkoff doesn't either.
And so the idea of Starmer's force being too simplistic, or the coalition, the willing, being too simplistic, you would say, what, John? It's necessary, perhaps?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think people thought it through well enough. It's not clear to me that they really understood they had a choice between two different kinds of missions. If you look at UN peacekeeping forces, for example, was this going to be a force that resisted breaches of the ceasefire? That is to say, a force that would conduct military operations against Russia if they broke it? Or would it be like a UN force that simply watches it happen and reports back to headquarters? And it seems like they're not going to make that choice because now they're not going to put boots on the ground.
Hello, Ambassador Bolton. Is it already impossible for the midterm elections to be held in a free and safe way when Musk's Shaw has taken away a lot of the civil service USA-wide? Or maybe I'm misunderstanding what might be actually happening, because logistics matter in my limited understanding, Ambassador Bolton.
Well, I think there's at this point, no danger to the midterm elections from what Musk and Doge are doing to the government. I think they're going to be important elections, and they could be very problematic for Trump, particularly in the House of Representatives. What Musk is doing, I think most Americans don't care about the procedural niceties that he's violating. They think the government's too big and too bloated, and by and large support what he's doing. I think it's better to try and fix the problems rather than destroying the agencies that are causing the problem, like the Agency for International Development, of which I'm an alumnus, like the Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Voice of America, which have been gutted. I wouldn't have done it that way for sure, but I don't think that's going to cause Trump a problem politically.
Do you think Elon Musk is doing a good job? Do you respect him, like him?
Look, I think he doesn't understand the federal government, and I think the real point about trying to cut the federal government budget is something Trump has ruled out. Our budget each year is about $6.8 trillion, of which $3 trillion are the so-called entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You're not going to make a huge dent in the budget deficit, let alone the national debt, until you get serious about reforming those programs.
They currently say that they're friends, Musk and Trump, but given Trump's tendency to blow up relationships, how long do you think Elon Musk will last?
I don't think this bromance is going to go on too much longer. There was an interesting scene at the end of last week when Musk went over to the Pentagon, at least according to the New York Times, to get a briefing on the China war plans, which would be an incredible outrage if true. But Trump came out after the meeting very strongly and said he shouldn't see the war plans, and Musk may have conflicts of interest because of his business in China. That was an interesting shot across the bow by Trump, I thought.
Let me ask you this question from Zach. Can the ambassador finally rule out or confirm one way or the other whether Vladimir Putin has something on Trump, which Zach says, in my mind, can only explain why things are the way they are? Is there compromise on the president?
Well, I don't know of any. Honestly, I didn't see any. I was there 17 months in his first term. I am still to this day his longest serving national security advisor. If I had seen anything, I would have remembered it. I just recall to everybody what Vladimir Lenin once said about people in the West that actually helped the communist cause out. He called them useful idiots. You don't actually have to be an agent, but you can be doing unwittingly what the communists want. I'd put Trump in that category. I'd put Witkoff in that category, too.
But did you put Trump in that category when you worked for him? Did you start to see this guy's response to things that you were talking to him about, whether it was your cautiousness on Putin, and think, blimey?
Well, that certainly came to me over a period of time. When I took the job, a lot of people said I shouldn't have taken it. I thought that Trump, like every other president before him, would be disciplined by the gravity of his responsibilities, the weight of the decisions he had to make in the national security space. And I found he wasn't disciplined by anything.
Were you really going to invade Venezuela? I saw that. Remember that image of the 50,000 troops on the Colombian border? That was on, wasn't it?
5,000.
5,000, sorry.
And that was Trump's suggestion. Actually, he was more hawkish on Venezuela than I was.
I wanted to ask if you think President Trump is serious about U.S. control over the Gaza Strip after the Israel-Hamas war, or whether it's a negotiating tactic. And also, I wanted to know what you think about the U.S. strikes in Yemen, and if the U.S. will really be able to defeat the Houthi terrorists.
Good questions.
Well, I think on the Gaza Strip, as I said before, he's a real estate developer. He sees a stretch of coastline. He wants to put up a casino and some condos and some hotels. It's never going to happen. The United States is never going to take control of the Gaza Strip. All of that is just fantasy. In terms of Yemen, I really think the Biden administration made a big mistake in not destroying the Houthi capability to interdict shipping on the Suez Canal, Red Sea maritime passage. Right after October the 7th. Look, this has been freedom of the seas is a fundamental element of U.S. and U.K. foreign policy. In the case of the U.S., since before we were a country, the Houthis wouldn't be able to obstruct anything if the Iranians weren't giving them missiles and drones. So completely unrelated to Israel and everything else that's happening in the region, breaking the Houthi effort to stop passage through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, I think should be a high priority.
Benji, thoughts?
Thank you very much for your answer. Do you think that because of the Houthis and the ongoing American strikes, that this after Trump's threats directly to Iran that this might escalate between America or Israel striking Iran because of Houthi action.
No, I think dealing with the Houthis is separate, but I do think this is a moment for Israel and the United States. If they were thinking of going after the Iranian nuclear weapons program, this is the optimal time to do it. The regime in Iran has been gravely weakened by Israeli attacks on the terrorist proxy groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. The Assad regime in Syria has fallen. This is a huge defeat for Iran. So I think the terrorist threat remains, although it's considerably reduced. The threat that has not been reduced is Iran's nuclear weapons program, which is a threat not simply to Israel, but to the U.S. and the whole world because of a danger of nuclear proliferation.
And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu has for years said that that is the real threat and that he has threatened to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. Do you think Trump would go for it? Do you think he would either let him or encourage him or put American warplanes up to do that?
Well, I think in the first term, Trump was certainly willing to let the Israelis do it. I think what Bibi wanted was American help. Personally, I would recommend providing it to make sure that the program never rises from the ashes.
And what would that mean, John? Just the reality of that. What does that actually mean? That means missiles striking Iranian nuclear facilities.
Well, that's correct. It means against their enrichment facilities, their conversion facilities, their weaponization activities, and their ballistic missile programs. I think that would cause even more finger-pointing and recrimination inside Iran than the fall of the Assad regime in Syria. I think the regime in Tehran is weaker than it's been at any point since the 1979 revolution, and we ought to be seeking to have that regime fall because there will not be peace and security in the Middle East as long as it's still in power.
03456060973. Benji, thank you very much indeed for your call. We talked briefly about the Trump plan of troops to Venezuela. I read that the White House has reportedly ordered the US military to plan to increase troops in Panama, given Mr. Trump's designs or President Trump's designs on the Panama Canal. Do you think is it in America's interest to take that canal, to have it as theirs?
Well, I don't think there's any possibility that the U.S. is going to use military force to take the Panama Canal back. Look, in 1979, I would have voted against the treaty to give it back to Panama, but a lot of water's gone under the bridge since then. The interesting thing is the president of Panama currently is really very pro-American, and before Trump started talking about the canal, he had invited U.S. military forces back into Panama to help close the trail of illegal immigrants walking from South America across Panama to get to the Rio Grande, the Mexican-U.S. border. So he was prepared to have U.S. troops come back, which would be, I think, very advantageous for the U.S. in any event and good for Panama, too. So that may be what's at work here. I think it would be a plus for both countries to do it in an agreed fashion.
Here's Jay in Saffron Walden in Essex. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Tom. Question is, Canada doesn't want to be a 51 state and Greenland doesn't want to belong to America. If they refuse, will Trump invade militarily?
Well, let's start with Greenland first.
Right. Well, look, there are already American troops in Greenland and have been on and off since before Pearl Harbor. That's how long that goes back. And the U.S. has long had, I think, quite a legitimate concern about the security of Greenland and its effect on the United States, dating back to 1868, when Secretary of State William Seward, fresh from buying Alaska from Russia in 1867, first tried to buy Greenland from Denmark. So this isn't a bright Donald Trump idea. This has been around for a long time. The interest we have is concern about Russia and China using the Arctic, now increasingly free of ice, the famous Northwest Passage really opening up to their advantage. Imagine China sailing through the Pacific to the Bering Strait and coming out in the North Atlantic, which is what they'd be able to do. So I think the NATO alliance as a whole has an interest in Greenland. The way to do this is by quiet conversations behind closed doors between the government of Denmark, the Greenlanders, and the United States. There's a way to resolve this. I looked at this very carefully in 2019, the first time that Trump came up with the idea. And if he would stop talking about it and defeating his own objective, I think we could make progress.
Oh, interesting. So you think there is a deal to be done? about American interest in Greenland, possible ownership.
I mean, a transfer of sovereignty would be fine with me, but the keep your
Yes.
keep your eyes on the prize here. The issue is security, not sovereignty, and I think we can work it out.
Greenland's Prime Minister has said
you're not going to work it out under the spotlights.
Yeah, and Greenland's Prime Minister said that there is a hostile takeover going over from Trump. He described a visit there, a US delegation visit led by the Vice President's wife, as a provocation.
Yeah, look, this is self-defeating on Trump's part. He also sent one of my successors, the National Security Advisor, which is always kind of ominous when the National Security Advisor shows up. There's no need for this. This is performance art. It's not good relations with Denmark or the Greenlanders.
John in Wickham, I'll come to your question in just a moment. But can I ask again, Ambassador, if your view from inside the room when you were there about Trump's real view of Britain? Because the story we're told, and indeed I heard some of it myself when I was in Downing Street and Trump was in the White House for the first time, he likes Britain, he likes the history, he likes Churchill, he likes the story, the narrative of the Second World War. Behind the scenes, is he a fan? Does he listen to Britain?
Well, his mother was a Brit originally, and so I think there's something of that. I can say for a fact he loves the royal family. I don't think I've ever seen him happier than the night of the state dinner at Buckingham Palace with Queen Elizabeth. Trooping the colors with the Queen at Windsor Palace was a big thrill for him. Well, I could just tell from his demeanor that he just he couldn't get enough of it. And I think Keir Starmer did the right thing when he brought a letter from King Charles inviting him for another state visit. The only problem with that is now he's played that card. It's hard to play it again. But it's worth considering. And if things got bad with Canada, we didn't really finish that answer. King Charles might be sent to convince him not to invade.
They are part of the Commonwealth, after all. John's in Twickenham. John?
Hi, Ambassador. If you were still in the room in your current role, what would your advice be regarding the Chagos deal? Would you advise the president to block it or to go with it?
Well, the idea that somehow or another the Chagos are going to be not even given a say in their own future, which is apparently what the British government's considering doing, is a mistake. Look, the court decision that they're purportedly acting under, I think, was illegitimate. I don't think there was any jurisdiction. And I think the risk to the Diego Garcia base, which is critical for security in the Indian Ocean, under Chinese threat as it is now, as they seek dominance in the Indian Ocean, is a huge mistake. To put the Chagos under Mauritius is just to invite the Chinese in. Look at the way the Chinese performed under the handover agreement concerning Hong Kong, supposedly one country, two systems for 50 years. It didn't even make it halfway through.
Although the Trump administration don't seem so angered by the deal that they're not going to allow it through.
I can't explain that. Somebody needs to bring Trump's attention to it in a more acute way. I certainly would never agree to it.
Can I ask you about, you talk about Chinese influence. Can I ask you about TikTok? There is a proposed American ban on it. What's your view of what that platform is?
Well, what it primarily is a vacuum cleaner for Chinese intelligence to scoop up information about users of TikTok. A lot of people argue about what goes over the platform and whether it's a violation of free speech to ban it. I couldn't care less what is transmitted over the platform, even if it is a lot of it Chinese propaganda. What I'm concerned about is that it's an espionage tool for the Chinese intelligence community. It's perfectly constitutional to ban it from the United States, and the sooner we do it, the better.
A ban from Britain as well, you think?
Right. Everywhere that's a free country. This is an incredibly creative act of Chinese intelligence gathering.
And we know that that's the case. That's not a claim that you're making. You know for certain, given the role that you were in, that this is effectively both an intelligence gathering tool by Chinese Secret Service and a PSYOPs campaign.
Yeah, and what we know about Huawei and ZTE, which are not telecommunications companies, they're also agents of Chinese intelligence.
A slightly delicate one from me, Ambassador. One of the people that you may have worked with in your time during the White House was a man called Seb Gorka, who is now the Senior Director for Counterterrorism. You called him a con man. He then described, and I'm quoting him here, you as having a risible 1970s porn moustache, an irrelevance, a neocon who nobody takes seriously. Why did you call him a con man?
Well, I think you should look seriously at his resume, where he claims he got his degrees, what he has done during his career. Just take a look at that and make up your own judgment.
He's over embellishing.
Well, that might be a polite way to put it.
Okay, so he's lying about.
He's a con man,
and he's lied about his credentials.
I think that's right.
Tony's in Maidstone. Tony.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Ambassador Bolton.
Your question.
Now, I think what everyone wants to know is what is Trump like behind closed doors? Is he what you see is what you get, or is he nice? Is he bad, or is he like the screaming baby that I think he is?
Well, I think in recent years, people are seeing a lot more of Trump in public the way he was in private before. I think he's less inhibited about his behavior, and he thinks he can get away with it, which basically he does.
Is there anything about him that you respect?
Well, I think he's got the ability to be incredibly gracious when he wants to. And as somebody once said, if you're so smart, why aren't you president?
Well, you did have a charge at it briefly, I think, if I remember that rightly.
Very brief.
And so Britons who fear him and fear the possibilities of what his decision-making could entail for us and the world, are they right to?
Well, I think fear in the sense he has no understanding of how alliances work, both his position on Ukraine, his position on NATO, his position on tariffs, have the risk of breaking apart the Western alliance, which has kept us all safe and secure since 1945. I don't think he understands the full implications of what he's doing. And I think notwithstanding all the grief he's causing, people should not overreact. His term will end and we'll still have we'll still have the West as a whole to think about.